Hello, welcome to Mirror of Paradise. I am Hannah Hunt. I am a wedding floral designer, and I also lead the floral liturgical design team for my parish, Saints Peter and Paul, in the mountains of North Carolina. I guess we'll start by answering the question I get asked a lot: how did I get started in liturgical floral design? And I would say that goes back to when we were in Florida. My husband was in the military, so we did move around a lot. But we were in a Greek parish, and I was invited in to help decorate the Kavuklion. That is the tomb of Christ. In Arabic, Nash. In English, we would call it the bier or the tomb. And being part of that holy feast day in a different way by coming and adorning the tomb of Christ with flowers, it resonated with my heart, and it really awoke a passion for bringing in flowers into our worship experience. But my first experience with flowers in the Orthodox Church goes back further when we were brand new into the Orthodox Church in Alaska. And I had already been overwhelmed by the layers of beauty that I had encountered in the Orthodox faith, the layers of vestments and altar coverings, the candles, the reflection in the icons, all of the beautiful things on the altar all resonated deeply in my soul. But it was one Sunday, and a small child, I believe she was Yupik, came into the church, and she had this little wadded up bunch of flowers in her hands. And they were wildflowers and very wilted and a little sweaty from her palms, but she went and so very reverently placed them in front of the Eikona of the Theotokos. And I was so struck, especially coming freshly out of the Protestant world into this Orthodox experience, I was struck by the simplicity and the innocence and the beauty and the reverence of her offering. So years later, after we were in the Great Parish, my husband retired, and we ended up back in the mountains of North Carolina where he grew up in Boone, in a very small parish, Saints Peter and Paul. And I had just started my wedding floral business, and I was then asked to pretty much start the floral team in our parish. It was a very small parish. We're talking 20, 30 people small, very, very small. And I was so excited for the first Holy Friday. I came to church, I had my schematics, I had my sketches and my drawings and a plan, and I'd picked all the right flowers in just the right shades and tones. And I came to church ready to design. And I showed up, and there was a large amount of volunteers, all waiting and ready and excited to help. And that sounds like a great thing, but you have to understand, as a floral designer, when I'm on site at a wedding and I'm getting ready to install some beautiful monumental piece, might be the arbor for the ceremony, it could be a majestic piece adorning an antique fireplace. When I'm in design mode at a wedding, I actually even have a team member. Their whole job is to run interference between me and anybody who might come to me with questions, because when you get interrupted and you're in that design process, it kind of just stops everything and it takes you out of that focal point. And so here I am, I've got all these people, how can we help, how can we help? And I had a moment of panic, a little bit of stress, and I had to step aside and have a little conversation with God and quickly realized what was important. So I gave the designer the day off, and I got everybody involved working on the Kavuklion. And when we were done, we stepped back, and it was magnificent. It was not what I had designed, but it was perfect. And this elderly gentleman comes up to me and he starts shaking my hand. At first he was speaking to me in Greek, and then he just had tears in his eyes, and he was so excited. And I'm thinking in my head, well, it was good, but it's not that good. But he goes on to tell me that in their previous parish, the Kavuklion, the tomb of Christ, was decorated by a very niche group of women. And if you were in that group, you got to help, but otherwise you didn't. And this was the first time he had been able to witness not only his wife and his grown daughter, but also his granddaughters having the blessing of adorning the tomb of Christ. And he was so moved by it. And it took me back to that moment in Alaska with the purity of that child's offering. And it really resonated with me that what we were doing in the church was not decorating. that this was an extension of the feast day, and that we were coming together in this communal act of worship to offer back to the Master his masterpiece, to offer back to the Creator part of his creation, and adorning the tomb of Christ. And I've had comments made, I've heard parts of conversations where flowers in the Orthodox Church is almost trivialized and diminished, maybe viewed as something just decorative and girly and foofy. And while yes, floral design is a feminine art, I would say that the beauty of the Orthodox faith in my experience is this beautiful balance between the masculine and the feminine. But beyond that, flowers and coming together and adorning the church and preparing for the feast days is a way of bringing people together and building a sense of community. And with that in mind, I would strongly encourage the involvement, if you're leading the floral team, of involving the youngest and the eldest members in our community. Our elderly, they may be stuck at home in the evenings, they may be unable to drive, and it's very easy for them to start feeling isolated and disconnected from what's happening in the parish. But normally when we're decorating in the church or adorning, we're coming together usually in the morning time, particularly like on Holy Friday or Pascha. This is happening in the daytime, and it might be more achievable for them to attend and be part of it because it's during the day. And the elderly bring with them this collective knowledge that it can't be dismissed, and it needs to be able to be shared. They have this continuity with what their mothers did and their grandmothers did and what they did in the old country. So we need to make sure that we're including them. And that evening of maybe a Holy Friday, they're sitting at home, maybe they're able to live stream it or perhaps just later see photos, and they're going to see something that they were part of and feel connected and not feel marginalized. And likewise with the youth, just like flowers are our present. Flowers live in the present, and this is, in the church, we know that this is where we find God in the present. Well, same with our children. They are the present. They're not the future. They're now. And we need to find ways to get them involved and get their hands helping and connecting. A story that's very dear to my heart was, it was one Palm Sunday, and I was in the fellowship hall with all the flowers getting ready to adorn the icon frame for the evening's bridegroom matins. And I turned, and there was a child, and she was maybe 8 or 9, and she was keyed in on what I was doing. She had her eyes on those flowers. She wanted to get her hands all over those flowers. And then likewise, there was an older woman standing next to her, and this was her first Holy Week. And likewise, she's also just, you can tell, they want to touch those flowers, and they want to help, but they were not going to ask. And so I stopped, and I looked at them. I said, "Would you like to help?" And their eyes got really excited, and they're like, "Can we? We can do that?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I got them in, and I showed them what to do, and then I stepped back, and I let them do. And the result, again, was just beautiful and magical, but more important, that evening, when that child came into the church for the bridegroom matins, her eyes glowed. She grabbed her daddy's hand and started saying, "Daddy, Daddy, look what I helped make." My prayer is that this child is going to remember this and look forward to future feast days and ways that she can be connected and help and feel part of everything that is happening. So then it kind of leads us to that question, why does beauty matter in the church? Why is it important? And this is a topic of conversation we're hearing more and more prevalently within the Orthodox community. And there's 2 quotes that I feel kind of exemplify what we're doing and why we're doing it. The first is from John Miravel, and he wrote a book called Beauty, What It Is and Why It Matters. And he said that what we moderns have forgotten, the ancients knew well, that true beauty heals the soul, draws us towards God, and yields lasting happiness. And then the other quote is from Sebastian Brock, and he wrote an article that you can find online called Beauty Will Save the World, Insights on Ephraim the Syrian, St. Ephraim. And if you have not read Hymns to Paradise and you love flowers, I would highly encourage you to read St. Ephraim's Hymns on Paradise. It's a beautiful poem that's so deep with theology, but it also has so much reference connecting paradise and flowers. It just resonates, obviously, with me because I kind of love flowers. But he says that beauty, whether it be the beauty of God, the beauty of paradise, or the pearl is a symbol of Christ, serves as a means of drawing, here's that word again, drawing a person in the direction of God. And we know in the floral world that flowers do awaken the senses. They do draw attention. And Saint Ephrem, he saw the purified soul as a mirror, as a reflection of God and godliness, and a return to the original state. And looking at the Divine Liturgy then through that lens, it's a mirror of paradise. And we can go a little bit even further with a quote from St. John of Kronstadt. And he actually said that flowers are the remnant of paradise on earth. So when we are touching flowers, God left these for us, and they are the remnant of paradise on earth. So if we're creating that mirror of paradise in our liturgy, and we know that Chronos time and Kairos, they blur, that we are at the actual events. So that kind of brings like a whole new understanding of what's happening when we're bringing those flowers into church. So how does this relate to the flowers in the church? I would compare it to a wedding venue. So in the wedding industry, we take a venue that's a very bare utilitarian space. It's a little echoey. And just through adding those layers of beauty, we're starting with the tablecloths, we're adding candlesticks and candles and reflection, and then the flowers. And just through these additions, we have elevated the experience of anybody who walks in that room. And the inside of an Orthodox church is obviously not a bare utilitarian space. We already have layers of beauty. But by adding that extra layer of the flowers, we're creating an awareness that something different is happening here, something important. So when we come into the church on a feast day and our eyes are caught by those flowers, ideally those flowers are drawing us then in toward the icon of the feast or the element from the feast day that we are adorning. And they're just creating that awareness. So thank you very much for joining me in exploring a little bit into the world of liturgical floral design, and I pray that you continue on your journey to creating a mirror of paradise in your own parish.